The ideas, procedures, and suggestions contained within this podcast are not intended as a substitute for consulting with a medical professional. All matters regarding your health and fitness require medical consultation and supervision. Welcome to the Warrior Wellness Podcast, a podcast for military members, veterans, and first responders focusing on fitness, health, nutrition, and biohacking. Our mission with this podcast is to introduce America's heroes to lifestyle habits and hacks that will help them live healthier, happier lives, and in turn, be fit enough to continue their support of their communities and country.
Well, Dr. Mike Sinel and Dr. Larry May, thank you so much for joining me on the Warrior Wellness Podcast. So we're going to talk about some interesting, pertinent things, especially for our veteran and law enforcement and first responder community that you're experts in. But I'm going to give you a chance to go ahead and, take a couple minutes to introduce yourself and your background, and we'll dive right in. Dr. Mike, do you want to start?
Sure. Thanks for having me. So I practice medicine and specialty of physical medicine and rehabilitation, board certified for 30 years now, and have been 30 years an assistant clinical professor at UCLA School of Medicine. Wrote a couple of books on back pain, and I used to be director of the pain clinic at the VA hospital here in Los Angeles many years ago. And I've been treating pain and musculoskeletal problems for many years, as focusing on spinal disorders and a variety of musculoskeletal and complex chronic pain problems, and always looked for more natural, healthy solutions in patients if the possibilities of avoiding things like surgeries or pharmaceuticals when possible. And we'll obviously be circling back to my experience with medical foods, which have been a great advantage in these natural approaches.
Oh, great. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, about your VA experience, because I'm sure you have some stories. So, Dr. May, your turn, your background.
I'm a primary care internist, still practicing now in a concierge practice, but my career also started at the VA after finishing my residency in medical school in Boston. I joined the faculty at UCLA, and I was director of health services research and of the emergency room at the Wadsworth VA hospital before going into practice. And though I wouldn't say I come from a military family, my father was an Air Force major during World War II, and it was the best time of his life. And we ate at the Fort Hamilton Officers Club as his go-to restaurant.
I'm sure that was delicious.
I remember it fondly.
That's a treat. Well, I'm so glad to hear you both have experience with the VA, obviously with your current expertise in the areas that we're going to talk about today. This is very pertinent for military veterans who are notoriously, definitely suffering from chronic pain issues, chronic conditions that create pain for them. So we're going to talk a lot about that, but your expertise currently is an interesting thing called medical foods. And to be honest, and I've been in the wellness space for a while, I've never really heard this term. So do one of you want to kind of explain what medical foods are? What does that mean?
Yeah, I'd love to jump in on that. So it is a very unique category because most people are very aware of pharmaceuticals and supplements. And as we all know, pharmaceuticals, although we take them when we need them, have gotten a bad rap over the last number of years. And, they're new chemical entities with many side effects on the system. And the world of supplements we've seen in the last few decades just dramatically increase. I hear quotes that it's a $70 billion industry now, continuing to grow. And people went to supplements, I think, because they're more natural molecules, vitamins, minerals, herbs. Well, medical foods are a very interesting in-between category between supplements and pharmaceuticals, in that they are FDA regulated, unlike supplements. And that's probably the biggest problem with supplements, in that they're unable to make claims that they treat disease where medical foods are, and they're not regulated by the FDA for manufacturing. And there's been many studies on supplements where they've shown that the ingredients they state on the labels are not really what people are getting. So to go into the definition of a medical food, per the FDA, I break it down into the 4 things that they require. So all the ingredients are in a category called GRAS, G-R-A-S, which is generally recognized as safe. And these are natural molecules. Again, minerals, vitamins. Ours primarily have amino acids and botanicals, all right? But all natural ingredients. The manufacturing, again, is certified GMP. So that's pharmaceutical grade manufacturing. They do require physician supervision, although right now the FDA use of physician supervision is a bit confusing in that we have it on the label, and you should have a doctor managing whatever condition you are taking the medical foods for, but you don't have to get them through a prescription. And the 4th criteria, and I'll come back to that in a moment because it's very relevant to the history Larry and I have with these. And the 4th criteria, which I think is the most significant, is that you have to prove scientifically that you're meeting a nutrient deficiency in a particular disease state that cannot be met through a normal diet. So these are specifically formulated to address nutrient deficiencies associated with diseases where you can't get those deficiencies met by just eating the right foods. And these are encapsulated products. And that's very, very important too, because people think of medical foods as green drinks or bars, etc. And these are encapsulated like a supplement or like pharmaceutical, but they are nutrients. The products we're going to talk about today are all amino acids and botanicals. And when Larry and I were first working with them, they were prescription only. And that's real important for people to know here. So these products were developed, for the nutritional management of a number of very common diseases and symptoms, including chronic pain and inflammation, sleep disorder, neuropathy, cognitive decline, fatigue, and obesity. We'll get into that, but they were put together as prescription only. And when I was prescribing them, they were being reimbursed by insurance at approximately $400 a bottle. And just to fast forward where we are today, they're no longer prescription only. We have the same products that we could bring straight to the people who are, your consumers, and through different practitioners without a prescription, through over-the-counter pharmacies, which we also have online as well, and without a prescription. And we have them priced very, very well, and there will be specials here, but the general consumer retail is about $60 right now.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. I just learned so much in just that short amount of time. I'm making notes here, and you're blowing my mind. This is great. So, I know, and I've been in the supplement business as well for the last few years, and Fireteam Whiskey has a supplement. So I know, there's some pretty shady things going on in the supplement world, and they're not FDA regulated. And there's a lot of health claims even though they're not supposed to be making health claims. So I know that you probably have run into, which is probably why you started your own supplement brand, the issues with, of knowing that a person is actually getting what they're paying for. They're getting a high quality product. They're not taking a product that's going to be damaging to them when they think it's going to be helpful. So, Dr. May, do you want to talk a little bit about how to discern safe supplements and the issues with supplement regulation, and kind of how this led into, what you all developed with your own products?
Let me say a couple of other words about our product. The ingredients are going to look familiar. They're amino acids that are the precursors to the neurotransmitters that we're looking to augment for purposes of improving sleep quality, cognition, and pain reduction. but our products are patented. It's based on something called targeted cellular technology. And the botanicals that Mike referred to are in there so that the messenger amino acid, as we characterize it, which is familiar, is not the same as taking arginine or choline or 5-hydroxytryptophan, because ours are in a system where we stimulate the cell to uptake the amino acid. We turn that cell on to manufacture the neurotransmitter. We have an element to prevent the adenosine break. All neurotransmitters have intrinsic something that stops them from being manufactured, and we stop that from happening so we can increase the manufacture. And then we use a phytonutrient, another botanical, to prevent the development of tolerance. So many people take amino acids in massive doses. They work for a day or two, but then they stop, and they don't have any of the elements that are covered in our both domestic and international patents that make these non-reproducible. And because we were, and I was there at the beginning with the cardiologist scientists that developed the patents, and I've been using it in practice for over 20 years. But we've studied these in randomized, placebo-controlled, double-blinded studies published in peer-reviewed journals. And that makes it unique and different from dietary supplements. Now, I also have a vast experience in the dietary supplement world. I functioned as the chairman of the medical and scientific board for a large international company that we don't have to mention, but the dietary supplement world is much more heterogeneous, much less scientific, and anybody can reproduce most of those formulas. This is different from those, and indeed, the problem with adulteration sometimes is adding little amounts of drugs to the dietary supplements, as well as having often inferior ingredients in lower amounts. And you're familiar with the various groups that try to analyze the products and find many of them wanting. But while you can purchase our medical foods like a dietary supplement, they are scientifically formulated and clinically studied and published in reference peer-reviewed journals.
Oh yeah, that's great. That's fantastic. Yeah. And I've done interviews with other people of supplement brands, and that I love that how you kind of targeted that issue of tolerance specifically, because that is an issue with, even taking high quality supplements is, it's only going to work for so long, and you kind of build up a tolerance for it. And then what are you going to do? You're going to take more and more, or, you're going to have to wean yourself off and then go without it for some time and then have to get back on. So yeah, that's fantastic. So, you had mentioned pain a lot of, you both have mentioned pain several times, and one of your supplements does address the issue of pain. Dr. Mike, do you want to talk a little bit about how the neurotransmitters are targeted here, and how this relates to a person's experience with pain?
Yeah, I want to just follow up for a moment on Larry's comment. So we're referring to our technology now as messenger amino acid technology, the targeted cell technology. So messenger amino acid technology. And I just want to put an exclamation point behind how rare it is to have human clinical data, like double-blind placebo studies against the biggest pharmaceuticals out there. And that'll segue me right into the pain category, because we have published studies against ibuprofen and naproxen, which are non-steroidal anti-inflammatories and some of the most common used. And although taken by, probably tens of millions of people for chronic pain and inflammation, just like opioids are taken, our products are completely natural with absolutely no side effects and no drug interactions, and don't develop tolerance. And, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, which are typically a first line for pain, these many, many types of ibuprofen type meds, Advil and Aleve type medications, they're really associated with very high degrees of side effects. I mean, everything from gastrointestinal upset to bleeding, and ulcers, to cardiac toxicity, to kidney toxicity. And the list goes on past there. And obviously, in the field of pain, there's very limited approaches, really. I mean, we have opioids, which we all know, have tremendous problems with addiction and a myriad of side effects. Non-steroidals are usually a first line before opioids, and just are really very, very problematic when we look at the safety profile, especially on a big population. And I used to prescribe these on many people and was able to get them either completely off non-steroidal anti-inflammatories or significantly lower the dose of anti-inflammatories. And our human study, one of the studies with naproxen, shows you could lower the dose by 70% when combining it with Theramine. And when you do that and get the same effect, and when you do that, you could basically reduce the side effects by probably 95%, because most side effects are dose related. And many people also can't tolerate the side effects of many of the prescription medicines, or even the over-the-counter medicines like ibuprofen and aspirin. So I think it really makes sense to start with these neurotransmitters, and how they're working in the short note is, if you think of a car running up a hill, it uses more gas. So during diseases, there's an increased metabolic demand on the body in a cellular level. If you have chronic pain and inflammation, the cells are having to work harder to regulate. So just like a car running uphill would use more gas, or my Tesla would use more electricity going up the hill, right? So you get a relative depletion of the neurotransmitters, which are the signaling molecules of the body that talk to the nerves throughout the nervous system, tell them how to work. Well, they're not being kept up at the proper levels. And what we do is, by providing these amino acid precursors with this amino acid technology and botanicals, is we're replenishing the neurotransmitters to the proper levels, and thereby allowing the cell to get into a good homeostatic state where it's balanced, and the natural abilities of the body to heal will help. So it actually dampens the pain signal when you reproduce these neurotransmitters that goes through the spinal cord and into the brain.
Let me make another couple of points. What it was also required for medical food is to demonstrate what Mike referred to, that there is a deficiency of a neurotransmitter. So we both established, based on the literature, that there's both a deficiency and a problem with keeping up when you have a disease. But we also, before we did our clinicals, we demonstrated that the technology does generate neurotransmitters. So we proved that we increased the level of serotonin. And not only did we show the physiologic effect, but then in the studies, we showed the clinical benefit. The second thing that we did is, at one point, we were providing a medical food with a drug in a co-pack. so that you can use your existing medication with the medical food. But in the case of pain, you can reduce the dose, frequency, and most importantly, the chronicity. NSAIDs are not recommended for people over the age of 70. The Geriatric Society says unequivocally they shouldn't be used. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't take a couple of Advil or a couple of Aleve, but you shouldn't use it chronically. Theramine is a chronic medical food, safe, but if you have breakthrough or an additional pain comes and you have to take a couple of NSAIDs for a day or two, it is synergistic. They work together. And in the studies that we did medical food, NSAID, medical food plus NSAID. And again, not only do we show the clinical benefit, but we also show the scientific. And to my surprise, NSAIDs actually raised some of the markers of inflammation, something called C-reactive protein. And our medical food reduced the markers of inflammation and also showed that the patient's description showed a reduction in pain. So we have the patent, the science of producing the effect that we claim, and the clinical study to show the efficacy for the patient by the patients reporting on what we call validated questionnaires.
Yeah. Wow. That's tremendous. And when you were both talking, it being in the military health space for, almost 20 years now, myself, and I know with your background, both of your backgrounds and the VA, it really is just kind of a devastating tragedy to know how many lives were lost or how many people who have suffered tremendously from the kind of the old way of doing things, the use of NSAIDs or anti-inflammatories or steroids, for these conditions. And I know personally, damaging. I remember the old, even, I don't know if they're doing them now, but we all remember, if you've been in the military, getting the 800 milligram ibuprofens, and just taking those like candy all day long, just to push through, and how damaging that was. I remember I had chronic stomach aches and antacid reflux and, all sorts of issues with that, of taking those on a long-term basis, and how there's, these natural approaches and they're, proven to work better than these drugs that are still just kind of, available anywhere and in any amount, and they're causing such damage.
And Stephanie, we have people on these for 5 to 10 years, successfully taking it with no side effects, and no drug interactions. And, that is dramatically, if we look at people taking ibuprofen for that long consistently, the amount of problems you have are devastating. So, there's been articles written on these in big pain journals showing they should be a first-line treatment for chronic pain. And the bottom line is there's actually zero downside, no risk whatsoever. So, one of the directors of a pain fellowship, when he saw the literature, he has every doctor first line go to Theramine for people who have chronic pain inflammation. Some of my buddies who are in the academic pain space, they use them to always help people who are taking narcotics and NSAIDs. Try these and see if you could reduce doses or maybe get people off with no risk at all. I don't understand how everyone wouldn't take them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I can't wait to try it for myself, because I still have these old Army injuries that flare up on occasion. And, I don't take NSAIDs or anything at all, but, I definitely want to try this miracle medical food of yours. So you mentioned it. So let's talk about Theramine. Let's talk about your products and Centra.
Introducing the new Fireteam Whiskey Fitness and Nutrition app. Everything you need to get fit and lose weight right at your fingertips. Choose from hundreds of fitness videos and fitness plans. Search for workouts by fitness level, equipment available, or body part focus. Choose from several nutrition plans and customize your macros. Your entire fitness, nutrition, and wellness plan all scheduled on your calendar. Text a trainer anytime for tips, tricks, and motivation. Achieve your fitness and health goals with the Fireteam Whiskey app. Go to www.fireteamwhiskey.com to get 2 weeks of results for free.
Okay. And again, we have a number, when you think of someone with chronic pain, a large percentage of people with chronic pain also have sleep disorders, also have obesity because they go hand in hand because you're often disabled, right? Also have fatigue, which goes hand in hand with chronic pain, and also often have cognitive decline. And and separately, we have different medicines in addition to theramine specifically for neuropathy and osteoarthritis. So we really cover the gamut of people with chronic pain, sleep, neuropathy, osteoarthritis, cognitive decline, fatigue, obesity, with a variety of our products. And we'll send you for your notes each of the different products and their limitation, their indications and how they can be combined, because we sent you earlier a study on PTSD, right? And we also treated fibromyalgia. Many of these were on a combination therapy on a variety of our medications, including theramine for the chronic pain and inflammation, Centra AM for the fatigue and cognitive decline, and Centra PM for sleep and also depression. So we have two for sleep, Centra PM and Gabadone. One works more for chronic sleep disorders with depression, and that's Centra PM. And that we have human clinical studies against trazodone, which is one of the most widely prescribed sleep medicines in the world for many years. And then we have Gabadone, which works more for sleep and anxiety, and Centra AM for cognitive fatigue and decline.
Great. That's amazing. So you briefly mentioned that the veterans application that you used. Do you want to cover what the results of that were?
Yeah, Larry, do you want to talk a little about?
Specifically, we published one article on PTSD, and it was not, quote, controlled. It was a study of 20-something veterans and demonstrated remarkable improvement in sleep quality, in mood, and in functional ability. And in that study, we used two of the products, one to enhance sleep by rebalancing what we call the parasympathetic nervous system, so that sleep not only was achieved, but the quality and the sleep architecture was improved so people would wake up rested. And when we talk about the AM product, which generates high levels of acetylcholine, which is the master neurotransmitter and the focus for all the minimally effective prescription agents we have for the treatment of cognitive impairment or dementia. So they work, as most things work, by preventing the breakdown of acetylcholine. They inhibit the enzyme that breaks it down. Centra AM actually generates more acetylcholine. And in my patients with cognitive impairment, I will always start with Centra AM, and I might add one of the prescription agents that work synergistically to further increase the level of acetylcholine, because we as physicians and somebody who reviews the studies will see that the drugs we have for dementia are minimally effective. But Centra-AM is quite effective. And as I implied before, it can be synergistic with a prescription agent in a lower or less frequent dose. But the results for PTSD were so impressive. And as Mike referenced, PTSD has a lot of similarities to fibromyalgia. In fibromyalgia, pain is a major characteristic, but so are sleep disorders and cognitive impairment. So where we used to, and I personally, and my associate physician is a rheumatologist, we saw a lot of fibromyalgia. We'd have fibromyalgia referred, and we would dread it because there was nothing we could do. When we could give people Centra PM for the sleep, Centra-AM for cognition, and Theramine for the pain, suddenly fibromyalgia became an improvable diagnosis, as opposed to a diagnosis that just made people go down and down and down. So those similarities and the documented neurotransmitter deficiency, the documented deficiency in the amino acids, and our documentation of improvement in those parameters, as well as the clinical efficacy, makes me as a clinician very, very happy to have it as a tool.
Yeah, yeah. And that, I think that's an important point, is it's not, just like with the majority of our pharmaceutical medications out there, it's more just focused on masking the symptoms and not really doing anything to improve the systems that are malfunctioning, right? Which are causing the distressing symptoms. So, your products are actually improving those systems as neurotransmitters to hopefully improve the system that's malfunctioning. So you're not just masking symptoms, you're actually improving the physiology.
Yeah, we're improving the patient's function without the risk of side effects. So our sleep product enhances not just that you're sleeping, but that quality of the sleep is improved and you're not waking up with that hangover that sleep meds give.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you said that, in the sense of we are letting the body, we're balancing it nutritionally so that it could do its miraculous work as the best natural healer we know. And when the body is optimized, many of the systems can regulate to a point where their healing mechanisms are optimized. So that's what we're doing here with these neurotransmitters, which are, pain is a disease, chronic pain especially, more of the brain and the nervous system in terms of neurotransmitters. And I wouldn't hesitate to say that there's, between the variety of what we have here, in terms of the various products, that it would be a rare vet who wouldn't benefit from one of our products. Our neuropathy product works extremely well. In neuropathy, we have very limited medications in medicine, prescription medicines like gabapentin, Neurontin, or some of the tricyclic antidepressants sometimes work, but they have lots of side effects. And we have a medicine, Procura, that again has no side effects and can be worked in combination with these, often lowering the dose.
Right. Yeah. And you're getting to kind of the root of the problem and kind of getting nutritionally and enhancing the body's own ability to heal itself, which is what a concept, right? I mean, wow, isn't that what we should be doing?
Yes, food is medicine.
The corollary to that is the longer you take it, the better it works. And as we indicated, there's no tolerance, so you can take it forever. And you can reduce a dose. I use Theramine extensively in my practice. So one of the things that Mike did for many years, and I do, and my associate does, is we inject joints. We inject trigger points, bursitis, sacroiliitis, and I give everybody Theramine. And on the bottle it says 2 twice a day. But when I give it to them, I say, take 2 4 times a day. When you wake up, before lunch, before dinner, and before bed. And do that for 4, 5, 6, 7 days, and then gradually decrease it. So 2 things happen. So, and one point that, as I told you how to take it, these are best taken on an empty stomach. If you take it with food, the amino acid in the food will compete. And the whole point of a targeted product, and the company used to be called Targeted Pharma, because we target what's needed, we don't want the interference of food. So unlike some drugs which you take with food to lessen the GI upset, these are best taken when you first get up, before you eat, and at bedtime. And the thing that I've experienced is I might inject a shoulder bursa and then see the patient 2 weeks later, and the patient comes in and says, "God, my shoulder's fine, but I noticed that hip and knee pain has gone away as well." So then we may keep them on twice a day. Take it when you wake up, take it when you go to bed, and a lot of their other chronic pains that they weren't seen in the office for initially have improved. So it is truly restoring you to that youthful, healthy person you were before you were injured.
Fantastic. So I'm sure that people listening now, like myself and for my husband who has back pain, chronic back pain, are thinking, okay, how the heck do I get a hold of these products? How do I start? So Dr. Mike, can you tell the people listening how they go about, experiencing these products and getting some access to these medical foods?
Sure. I mean, you were supposed, medicalfoods.com, which is our website, and people could get them on our website, but we were giving you a special vet discount code. I think it's just vet is the word, VET. But that was supposed to be sent to you. And if it isn't, we'll send it to you so you could post it in your show notes. But it's
okay.
It's going to give a dramatic, I think, a 50% discount to all vets moving into the future with these, and now through your show. But medicalfoods.com, they could get, again, they can purchase them there, but they'll be able to put in the code VET. And I think they could get lots and lots of information on all the products off our website, including all the scientific papers, published papers, articles, the deep science, and they could learn about, every one of these. And again, they could try a number of them in combination. The appetite suppressant, Aptrim, it's very rare to have an appetite suppressant that's all natural with no side effects. And I know, New Year's resolutions are commonly losing weight. So appetite suppressants are sort of an exciting category to have something all natural. Medicalfoods.com, and we'll have all the articles on there, and it's available with the special discount code for the vets of 50%.
Wow, thank you. That is very generous. That's huge. I'm going to make my purchase today. Well, thank you so much to you both for taking your valuable time out to be on the Warrior Wellness podcast and sharing about your medical foods and how miraculous, really they are. There's no other word for it, for, basically anybody who is suffering from pretty much any, I mean, I would say in general, any chronic condition, right? I mean, nobody would be kind of excluded from this, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's enough symptoms here to cover a vast majority of all chronic conditions. Yes, that we have solutions for. And we have a number in the research pipeline that'll be addressing some other interesting problems.
That's exciting.
And one of the comparators, we've studied theramine against NSAIDs, but opiate use is a horrendous problem.
Yes.
And taking theramine will help all people, vets in this case, reduce their use of and dependence on one of the most destructive things that affects large swaths of the population, and I think significant number of veterans who have such severe pain that they need opiates. Maybe some will get off them entirely, but all of them can you reduce their use of them while improving their pain and function. So there's a lot of benefits, particularly to a population that's been so adversely affected by their service.
Right. And like you all said, I mean, I know you've seen this over and over again, especially working in the VA, and I certainly did. You know, it was just the worst tragedy to learn, you know, that a military member that I was working with, you know, had some sort of, you know, drug interaction, or, you know, overdose, and you know, tragically passed away, you know, because of that. Or also just the combination of the use of like alcohol with, you know, some of these medications that the VA was prescribing them, and unfortunately, you know, caused, you know, such a terrible interaction that, you know, and ended up in a tragedy of some sort or another. So I love that, you know, your products are natural. There's no concern about interactions or contraindications or anything like that. You know, that they can be used by anyone without any, you know, concern.
And that point that you made is very important, because a product like Centra AM, which I describe to my patients, it's like you woke up and the lights are dim, and this will turn the lights on. I'm approaching my mid-70s, and I still actively practice, and I take Centra AM as the first thing I do every morning, even before I brush my teeth. And if I don't take it, I miss it as I'm seeing my patients, because it improves your focus, as well as your memory, as well as your attention. And it does it without stimulation. It's not like Adderall or Ritalin, which I try never to prescribe. And Centra AM is for healthy people. I'm somebody who's high functioning, but my function is enhanced by it. And I sleep well, but I also use Centra PM because I sleep better.
Even better.
And that's an important thing, because not everybody listening is somebody who has an impairment. Many of them are just vets who live life like anybody else and can benefit from that increased focus and work productivity and enjoyment of life, because what we can get from our food is not targeted and not as good.
Well, and especially for the, you know, one of the populations we're talking to right now on this podcast is first responders and law enforcement, who notoriously are on shift works and have constantly changing shifts. So, you know, they're using stimulants, i.e., you know, maybe buckets of coffee or, or, you know, large sugary energy drinks to stimulate themselves to, you know, because of their schedule changes and their shift work, and to stay awake for, you know, and alert for long hours. And then, you know, of course, then they come off shift and then they can't sleep because they have overdosed basically on caffeine and sugar over the last 12 hours. And so their sleep is dysregulated. So then on and on you go in this spiral of, just complete, a meltdown of your systems because you're not getting good quality sleep because you're overstimulating and you're fatigued. So you overstimulate some more, and on you go with the shift workers and, law enforcement who are on these kind of wacky schedules.
Yeah. So we're excited, obviously, to make this available at a big discount to first responders as well. So we will get you all the codes. It'll probably be FR for first responders, but
okay. Great. Yeah, we'll definitely put those in the show notes, and that's very generous. Thank you so much, because I think this could be a very useful product, especially for those shift workers out there. So I really appreciate both of you, Dr. Mike Sinel and Dr. Larry May, for coming on the Warrior Wellness podcast. And all those links with the discount codes will be in the show notes. Go to medicalfoods.com in order to order these amazing products. And I can't wait to hear about all of the people out there who try these products and let us know how they work for you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Glad to come.
Thank you.
Hey guys, thanks so much again for joining us on another episode of the Warrior Wellness Podcast. Please make sure to subscribe, follow, like, all that good stuff on your favorite podcast platform and on our YouTube channel. Go ahead and leave us a review while you're there. And if you screenshot your review, email it to info@fireteamwhiskey.com with your name and address. You'll be entered into our drawing for a prize for just leaving us a review. So let us know what we're doing great, what you'd like to hear more about. And please go ahead and just give us a follow and give us a honest review, especially on iTunes, because that helps us reach other military members, veterans, and first responders with this vitally important information about how to improve their health, fitness, and wellness. We will see you at the next episode of the Warrior Wellness Podcast. I am your podcast host, former Army Captain Steph Lincoln, founder of Fire Team Whiskey.